lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. Today I'm so excited that I have Anthony Doc Ameen back with me. I'm not sure you guys remember that we actually recorded a podcast about a year ago now where he shared with us his story of his tour in Afghanistan, and it was very intense, and I definitely recommend that you guys go back and look for it and listen to it. That was no video, it was just an audio podcast, but it was super intense. I really loved that time, and since then he and I have been hanging out together as much as possible, even during this COVID interruption. So, welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me back. I'm doing good.
It's good,
Thanks
man.
for
It's
having
good.
me back. It's appreciated.
How you sleep last night, man?
I slept good. It's just weird times we're in right now, but I feel like everyone's waiting for A, the election to pass us, and B, I just feel like the world, not just America, but the world over, is ready for this thing to normalize again and be behind us.
This is a year that I don't think obviously anybody expected when we were all celebrating 2020. You know, we all had I remember even you and I were talking about 2020 is going to be a great year, and it was building up to be a great year, and then all of a sudden when COVID happened, I am the first one who underestimated what COVID was going to be. When I first started saying, oh, China, this and that and all that stuff, I said, all right, it'll go away. In fact, I had a podcast with David, and I was saying, we'll get 1,000 cases, and then it'll be history. Pretty much like Trump, which is not a good thing. But anyways, 6 months later, we're still fucking dealing with the COVID shit and all that stuff, and it's so upsetting.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have elections, and we have this, and we have all this politics going on, and you said every country. I hate it. You know?
Even the crazy weather all over the globe. You got hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, fires. It's intense and it's nonstop. I feel like once we feel like things are getting better, something else is like major headline and something else happened, or another riot or another looting took place. And
that exactly. And then on top of that, we had the Black Lives Matter movement that came after a few examples of police brutality and all that stuff. So I think everybody's very edgy these days.
Oh yeah,
for good reasons too. When you all of a sudden you have a perfect job and then you get furloughed or laid off or whatever for no apparent reason, or businesses that are doing very well are forced to shut down just because the government says you're not an essential business, we need to shut down, and you have no customers. That's tough. It's tough for a lot of people.
And as a business owner and as a father of 4, I feel like I've been tested very much with how am I going to react with empathy or compassion or sympathy for others around me, whether it's my own family members, both my immediate family and surrounding family. And, my family's mixed politically. So we've got some Democrats, we've got some Republicans, and, I feel like I'm the little guy on the fence that's like, okay, sounds good. Okay, sounds good.
I know.
I'm trying not to get in arguments.
Honestly, I normally I'm more conservative and also on the Republican side, but really I like, action. I like, results, basically.
Sure.
So when it comes to results, I don't really care who provides them as long as they are consistent. And the thing that frustrates me is that not just in the US, but also when I do actually read and, follow what's going on in the rest of the world. Obviously my background is European, and I have family in Spain and friends all over the world stuff. So I really follow like what's happening in England and Spain and France, Italy, and all these countries.
Well, plus you're a business owner.
Exactly.
And you have international businesses.
And I have a lot of customers, right? Yeah. So honestly, the commonality between this is that there's no commonality. Everybody's saying something different. Everybody's taking different resolutions. It looks like politicians are taking over epidemiologists and people that are more experts in the medical field, and they just have their own agenda to make resolutions that are good for their own agenda or their own political aspirations or goals more than what is good for the health of people, and then people are starting to get worn out with this meandering thing of, we need to do this like in the beginning, wash your hands 20 seconds and do this and don't touch anything, and all that stuff, and then masks are not needed, it's just for medical professionals and all that shit, and all of a sudden masks are the thing, and social distancing, and then you see all these inconsistencies from different, even in the US, different governors that again, some governors are more liberal and they say, okay, we can do this. Some others say, oh, no, we're going to do this. We're going to shut down everything.
Sure.
I mean,
it's annoying.
It's really annoying. That's when you start losing faith in those guys that you've put in power to make decisions.
Right, people that we voted in.
Right.
At least for the voting, at least for those of us that do vote, there's a good portion of American citizens that don't vote because they don't give a shit. They're so over the bullshit.
I know, and that's the thing. That's the thing that is happening now.
I'm trying to work on my cussing too. So sorry, Mom.
we don't censor anything here, so we don't have beeping technology. Yeah. So you say fuck goes. Anyways, or whatever you say. But no, I mean seriously, the thing is, and we're getting a little more into elections now, and this conversation, by the way, is going to be meandering all over the place. So try to keep up and follow us. But the elections are in 6 weeks or so, November 3rd.
I think we're like 49 or 50 days out.
Yeah, 50 days. And frankly, I haven't seen, I'm kind of in my 50s now, mid-50s, and I've been through a lot of elections in different countries, different places. I'm being in an election where I'm so disappointed with all candidates, with the two that we have here for sure. It's just fucking crazy. I mean, seriously, you have one that is bad and the other one is like not much better, And I'm not saying which one is which, but just that's the fact,
Right.
It's like we have two guys. One is going to be 78 by the time he's elected, if he is elected. The other one is 72, 73, or 74, whatever. He's like a freaking wreck moving on two legs. And it's like, what the fuck? Is this the guys that we want to lead our country? And then it's so frustrating, It's like you're trying to vote for the lesser of two evils, and you don't know. I mean, you have to decide, but it's like, what do we do? I don't think that you have the hardcore Republicans who are going to vote for Trump no matter what, and then the hardcore Democrats will just vote for Biden no matter what.
And then you've got a select few that are conservative mindset, but they don't like Trump. So I feel like those individuals would rather take the risk on voting Biden in and not allowing the Senate to sway towards the left and basically keep the Senate on the Republican side, and take the risk by voting in Joe Biden, and then hoping that he doesn't overhaul and completely dismantle everything Trump's done.
Right.
Look, I don't want to get too much more into this because, it's frustrating. I lost a leg for this country, as some of the viewers and yourself know, and I feel like everyone has a right to say something.
Right.
But I feel like the way in which they're sharing their opinions, their frustrations. Social media, sure, it's an outlet for a lot of people, but I feel like it's a negative outlet. It should be more on a positive note. But again, for me, I was raised conservative, and I kind of lean on the Republican side of things, and I do very much have a lot of lenience and flexibility with liberal social issues.
Right.
And I feel like this country was founded a long time ago, and some of these social issues weren't really a part of society, whereas now, because we live in such a mixed society, especially Americans, that over the last couple hundred years, some of those issues have very much, what's the word I'm looking for?
Raised to the surface.
Yeah, that rose to the surface, right. And so since they have, I like to vote on social issues, and I see both sides of the fence on those. But with regards to just how we overall get things done, I'm a little bit more aggressive on the conservative side, just because that's how I was raised, and it's just what I believe.
And I agree. I'm basically the same way. I was raised in 3-4 generations of military families, so I have that kind of conservative side and very disciplinary and just getting things done. But what is disappointing is that it looks like there's everybody's like, instead of all coming together to solve a problem, it's like, I always make this analogy, like, okay, you have a boat that is sinking. This is not the time to start arguing whose fault it is. Let's just fucking save the boat first.
It's the best. There's two words that come to my mind right now. We live in a divided democracy.
Yeah.
It's very much a democracy, but it's very much divided. And that is the problem, that we don't even care. Like, let's say you're a liberal, and let's say I'm a conservative. Say something about anything.
Anything?
Okay, fuck you. It shouldn't be that way.
I know.
And that's how it is.
Yes, exactly.
And that's when social media and the uprising and the looting and the social, it's too much.
It's too much. No, exactly. And then people are starting to.
Sorry, Mom.
And that's just getting. It's like flaring up even more and more because, like I said, I mean, we're right now in a time where we're saying, okay, forget about our personal issues. Let's try to save this boat, and then we can work on our differences or whatever. But right now we're all sinking. So it's not about being right. It's about doing the right thing. And when we are in the U.S. sinking and the rest of the world is sinking, it's like each country is pulling in their own direction. And then in the U.S. we have multiple directions and everybody's trying to pull because it just so happens that we have elections here. Other countries don't have elections this year, so they can work on their own political divide or whatever and do whatever they can. But in our case, as we get closer, let's put it this way: if this was a normal election year, like 4 years ago, we'll be talking elections and debates and all the stuff since the beginning of the year. But now it's more convenient to have the news be more about the COVID situation and the way each party is pulling in their own direction or for their own interest, even for rescue packages and all the stuff. I mean, it's like Americans are losing their jobs. Americans don't have a job. They don't have money. You're telling them not to work, but at the same time, they don't have any money.
And people in the workforce, look, I've being a part of a nonprofit organization, and we don't need to go talk about too much work, but you have people in the corporate world, you got people that work for small businesses, and on a board of directors, you've got such a mixed, diverse group of people, and everyone's in their own little bubbles.
Right.
Everybody.
Right.
And not just them, but their employees and their staff and their coworkers and their friends and families, even churchgoers. I'm a part of technically 2 churches, and I feel like a lot of individuals are getting squirrely. Men, women, children, everybody's affected by this thing, and no one knows really what's going on. And it's a very interesting time to be a part of society.
Yeah, what is equally frustrating is the fact that we all did everything that we were told to do. Like when this thing started, like officially,
and it's still not good enough. Is that what you're gonna?
Yeah, like we started in March, getting a little more serious about this, and then finally they said, okay, we're gonna have in certain areas confinements, and everybody was kind of stay home, all that stuff, wear your mask all the time, and we were basically playing by the rules for the most part. Most people were doing that and only going to major, like essential outings, or going to a store. You were an essential worker going to work or this or that.
Oh yeah.
But we're doing everything by the book, and then it turns out that it didn't matter. Basically, we're back pretty much as far as numbers to where we were before, thinking, okay, well, all of a sudden this person that is making $12, $13 an hour is an essential worker, and you can go to the store, and that person now is, our life depends on that person being there.
Sure.
Because if we go to a store and the store is closed, because like if they make my business close and I'm a laundromat or whatever, and I'm not an essential business, and they close my business, they tell me, no, you cannot open a restaurant,
for example. You know what
example.
a pet peeve of mine is right now?
Yeah.
And I actually just saw it just a little bit ago at a store. I was running errands just before I came here. And I saw a gentleman walking into a store without a mask, so he put his hand over his mouth. Yeah. Okay. But then I didn't mean to look, but it was interesting that he wasn't wearing a mask and no one called him out on it. But right. In my mind, I would like to call him out on it, but I don't work at the store. I'm not a manager, right. So it's not my place. And plus, based on demographics, I chose to keep my mouth shut, right? Mm-hmm. However, the same gentleman, as he's walking in the store covering his mouth, he uses his hand that was covering his mouth, whether he has COVID or not, right. or coronavirus, he grabs like a bottle of spaghetti sauce, right, yeah. with his hand, and then he uses his other hand to cover his mouth and walks out and then pays that way. Well, his hands were right over his mouth the right. whole time, and
right. It's just,
even if COVID or no COVID, it's just
gross.
It's gross.
You shouldn't do that. I mean, it's like many of the things that said, okay, you need to wash your hands. Okay, well, people normally wash their hands, but even when we follow the rules, and then you realize that then they start saying, I remember specifically when it was Memorial Day back at the end of May, when they said, okay, we're going to
spike.
Yeah, we're going to see the spike on Memorial Day, but then they said, okay, we're going to start opening the economy again. They're reopening. Okay, the worst is over, all that stuff. And then we started having the summer, and everybody going to the
and then Labor Day just took place.
Right, Labor Day.
So if it spikes again, we're in bad.
Right,
we're in bad company.
And then it's like, but they already decided that, we're not going to lock down the country again. And that's actually not just the US. All other countries are saying lockdown is not going to work. Why? Because at the end of the day, when you shut down the economy, there are other unintended consequences that are far worse than what the COVID may
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So you have friends and clients all over the globe. Who have you talked to that's hit worse? Like what countries got it really bad right now?
Oh, well, Spain, for one, is the worst country as far as number of cases in Europe. It wasn't like that. Obviously, Italy was the one that was heavily pounded. As far as deaths, Italy in Europe is the highest country.
Right, sure.
Because they were the first one to have COVID. They were completely unprepared. And also the culture is very much hug you can see together and all that stuff. And then also the average of the age of the population is older. So a lot of older people died. So as far as number of deaths, Italy was hit the hardest. So the cases to death ratio in Italy was higher. Now as far as number of cases, Spain is the highest in Europe, followed by I think France, England, and then Italy, and then you go down to Germany and all that stuff, and other countries, Belgium and Holland and all that stuff. But basically, if you look at the curve, Europe was like 2-3 weeks ahead of the US. It's like it moved, from east to west, and so Europe got the cases heavily before the U.S., and then the U.S. started getting serious, and then Europe started recovering, and then the U.S. started recovering, and now the Europe is falling back into the second wave or whatever, where they are thinking now. England or the UK already said they're going to have specific lockdowns in certain areas. Spain is doing the same thing. I was just reading this morning that Madrid may have, which is the capital. They said, instead of locking down the entire city, we're going to have certain areas that are high exposure or high cases locked down.
Oh, wow.
So
it's not the whole country. It's just certain parts of the
areas,
country are going to be more secure than
because
others.
it's the same
that
thing.
Makes sense.
I think like here in Arizona, I think we've been very lucky. I mean, Arizona has a lifestyle that is very spread apart. Obviously, you compare Arizona or Phoenix, for that matter, with New York City. We're completely different, Though I'm not surprised that New York City was one of the most, or if not the most,
because everything's so compartmentalized, right. And people are so much closer to
everything
one
in New York is is a very density population. Especially Manhattan and all these areas that are very dense. A lot of population in small space. Life is more together and shopping and everything. Here we're all spread out.
Sure.
So I mean, if you don't want to, you don't run into another human for a while. I mean, you can go walking down the street, and especially when the summer came, then nobody goes out anywhere because it's hot. Our lifestyle is very different than the way people live in other places of the country. So it doesn't make sense to lock down the entire country when you have one area that is really in bad shape, and the rest of the country is kind of like, you can control it a little better.
Sure. I was going to say too that another pet peeve of mine is people that are saying that this is a hoax. Now, look, I have a medical background in healthcare over 15 years, and veteran advocacy and all that stuff. So when I hear people say, "Oh, it's just a hoax. This isn't real. After the elections, it's all going to go away." Okay, well, what about the rest of the world? It's very much a real, virus. There's
a lot of people that have a lot of conspiracies, because conspiracies feed each other, and they like to kind of think that there's always something behind. I'm not obviously believing that this is a hoax or anything. Now, the real question is whether this was an accident, or if he was provoked, or if it was
man-made, or if it was natural.
In the beginning, they said it was a wet market.
I personally feel, and this is just me, and I'm not a conspiracist either, but I do feel that this was, again, I personally feel.
I'm going to give you my opinion after this. So
okay, good. Yeah, my opinion is that it was China-made. Mm-hmm. It was man-made for the intent of what it's done, but I think that it got out of hand very quickly, and it was like a rapid fire all over the globe. I don't think it was intended for a global issue. I think it was intended for us.
I actually agree with you on that. I mean, I agree that forget the fucking wet market excuse on the bats and all that shit. I mean, that's happened before on the movie Contagion.
I mean, look at Ozzy Osbourne. He bit the head off of a bat on stage, and he's still alive and he's doing good.
Right. So I think that I think the wet market issue on the bat and all that shit is fucking excuse. I think this was lab made, and it's kind of proven actually. I think it wasn't intended to escape from the lab. I also think that this happened way before we think it happened. Like it happened maybe as early as October last year, and it finally in the Wuhan area, and it finally got out of hand. And the Chinese were trying to keep tabs over the whole fiasco thing until they had no chance. There were doctors that were raising their red flag, saying, "Hey, we saw this happening," and those doctors miraculously, casually just died of COVID or whatever. So, or they were killed. So, I think this was something that was prepared in a lab, it escaped the lab, and then the Chinese never communicated to the rest of the world, hey, we had a lab accident or whatever, and then this may happen, and that by the time they realized, oh, we don't have a choice, it was too late. It already has spread. They were basically people from Wuhan stuff traveling. That's why Italy got so bad, because they had to travel. They had people from Wuhan, from the lab, traveling for different business reasons to... That's one thing that Trump did very well, actually. He shut down the borders with China, or basically flights or anything from China at the end of February 29th, March 1st. And that actually saved us from having much more spread or sooner spread than we had. So that's one thing that he gets credit for, because they weren't coming to the US and they ended up going to other European cities instead. And then that's what happened to Europe, that they got it sooner. So, but at the same time, if you remember, it took the WHO like a lot of time to declare this a pandemic, meaning that it's global as opposed to localized, because they knew it was China and all that stuff, but they didn't declare a pandemic until way later because they were kind of protecting China.
And just a couple of things to touch on too, and then maybe we can talk about something else, because I honestly don't know too much about it other than what I'm sharing with you. I don't watch the news. It's a product.
That's good for you, yeah.
Well, I'd say about 2 years ago, a productivity hack for me. I like, I'm always busy. I got multiple projects I'm always working on. And, for me personally, a productivity hack was don't watch TV anymore. Just wipe that off your schedule. Mm-hmm. And so it saves me that much time every day, every evening. And I can either read a book or do something that's going to, benefit me as an entrepreneur. But I do know what I know from talking with people like you at the coffee shops or wherever I'm at. What you said you read, and I was going to ask you, I'm most active on social media on Twitter, just because I never liked Twitter. All the hashtags and the ats, and you have to figure things out. So it was kind of a challenge to me, and I feel like I mastered LinkedIn. Facebook's just getting stale. It's been getting stale for a long time. That's why they keep changing it, and they want it to survive. And that's why Zuckerberg keeps buying WhatsApp and Instagram and whatever else is out there that he can get his hands on, because he knows it's going stale. But anyway, I try to just... What did you say yesterday? So when you get into social media, it's
touch and go.
You call it touch and go.
Yeah.
You do your thing and then you're done.
Yeah.
And I call it look and leave. I look and then I leave.
Yeah.
Where are you getting your meetings since you watch the news?
I get my news. Well, I don't watch news on TV. I read a lot of in the internet. So my routine usually is either early in the morning or in the evening after dinner. I don't watch a whole lot of TV. Sometimes I have programs in the background. I watch a lot of documentaries and things on YouTube, stuff like that I like. Obviously, I'm a big race fan and all that stuff. So I watch a lot of documentaries on car stuff and things like that, And we can get into that later. But normally what I do is I take my laptop or something, and I do like to scan what the media is saying around the world, not just in the US, because I like to see what other countries think about us. And it's funny because all the European countries think that they are not so bad because they think that we're doing very bad, So they use us as a benchmark.
A scale, kind of?
Yeah, like a benchmark saying, oh, the U.S. is the worst country. They have the worst number of cases on everything. Like, we're really dying here. And
look at the political candidates that are...
Yeah, so they like to say, we're fucked here, but look at the U.S., the number one country in the world that are even more fucked up than we are. It's like, okay, well, that's not true, really. I mean, even when you do the absolute versus relative numbers based on the fact that we're about 350 million people here almost, when you compare numbers to numbers and apples to apples, we're not doing as bad as you guys are with a country with 50 million people, so cases and all that stuff. But aside from that, which is just numbers and shit, the common denominator from all the media is that they all highlight the negativity, and that's just a business model. I mean, if the media, and I'm talking the major newspapers of every European country, whether it's the equivalent of the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever major newspaper that is national circulation we have in the US, and you go to Spain, France, Italy, Germany, whatever, you read those, you read the headlines, and then you start kind of discarding the extreme bad, the extreme good, and then you say, okay, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So I kind of scan it, but the truth is that there's negativity always rules. And that's something that you learn. I actually grew up, or my first professional jobs were actually in news. Believe it or not, I worked for CNN back a long time ago, and then a lot of news, local news stations, all that stuff. And we used to say, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's something that is very known. Everybody knows it. So you have a bad story that is bad, and a good story that is a feel-good story. You're going to put the bad one because that's what leads always.
You know what? My uncle Larry, I hope that he listens or watches. He was a very successful clothier or apparel, apparel companies. He worked for Pepe Jeans London. Okay. He had his own store, Renegade Jeanswear in Texas. He had a few different stores, and he also helped launch DoorDash when it was at its height. Yeah. And so he was a national marketing and sales director. He said people respond to two things, pain and pleasure. Mm-hmm. But lately there's so much more pain than there is pleasure that they're just pouncing on it. And then it turns into these viral hate, almost like online protests is what social media has turned into. It's not even fun. And even my own kids ranging from 4 to 14, now not the 4-year-old's not on social media, but my 14 and 13-year-old are like, wow, I saw this really bad thing happen on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, don't watch that. And it's just like, you can't even control as a parent. You can't even do the controlling of how much pain your children are witnessing. And they were showing me the recent LA riots where they just bashed all the police vehicles and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to see that. And I sincerely don't want my children seeing that either.
Right. And I'm old enough to remember, obviously, life without social media and without 24-hour news and all that stuff. And back in the days, they were bad. I mean, we were through wars and all that stuff. You listen to the news and then you move on with your life. But now it's like constant stuff. I mean, social media is everywhere. So to answer your question, I scan the papers in the morning or in the evening, and then I go on with my life. I never, ever watch any news on TV, especially in the U.S. I don't care if it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, whatever. I know the affiliation of each one,
sure.
And they're so biased into this political side or that political side or whatever that I don't need them to brainwash me with their political affiliation, especially when I see people there that are less smart than I am, to be honest,
sure.
and telling me how I'm supposed to be feeling about shit that I can understand myself. So I don't watch any TV news. But social media, I do very, very little. I mean, I'm like you. Facebook is like out of the question for me. I mean, you see something from me on Facebook, it's usually that I post something on maybe Instagram and it goes automatically on Facebook. You saw how these kind of linked accounts. But I do a little bit of Twitter. When I do Twitter, it's more for selected groups of things, like maybe auto racing or things like that, people that I follow in a particular field, not so much, or business people like entrepreneurs that I also follow, to see their ideas and all that stuff. Basically the same people that I listen on podcasts that I think they're smart enough to separate fact from fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the guys that I also follow on Twitter. But I don't, I mean, my social media is, like I said, it's touch and go. I mean, I go in the morning, check a couple of things, maybe Instagram, because I like pictures. My Instagram is very vanilla. I mean, I follow people that have cool stuff.
Sure.
Whether it's cool cars or cool videos or cool things, but it's not really political or stuff.
Yeah, and same for me. Like in the morning when I'm a breakfast person. That's kind of like Monday through Friday. It's breakfast. It's daily devotional. I look at scripture. I read the Bible, and I've got my little my scripture rhythm. Every day I've got something daily devotional to look at, or sometimes it's a spiritual podcast or something that I'll listen to while I'm driving or dropping my son off at daycare or whatever. And years ago, it used to be Washington Post. That was like my main go-to.
Yeah.
It was for the most part center aligned, and I feel like they're leaning left ever since Bezos bought it. And I don't know.
And that's exactly the case.
I don't know his political background, nor do I give a shit. But my point is, when he purchased that, because it is Washington Post, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like when I look at it, or if I even try to look at it, I feel like it's just leaning left, and so I don't want to. I kind of want to stay neutralized. And so lately, I'd say this last year or so, I'm at least the last 7 months, Wall Street Journal for me personally, I feel like they're center aligned and they're just kind of spitting out the facts, and that's what I'm looking at it for.
The New York Times has become totally. I lost credibility in the New York Times a long time ago. Washington Post the same. I actually lived in the Washington D.C. area for almost 7 years, and I used to be subscribed, getting it every day. Back in the days when you actually read the Washington Post.
And do you agree with me? It's changed over the last.
Yes, it has a lot, and it started already changing. I think obviously when Bezos bought it. I think it's just if Bezos and Trump don't get along, then you're going to see that reflection on Washington Post, and that's how it is. So. It's just like the thing is that newspapers used to have or news for that matter used to have the news the way it is, just tell me what happened, and then you have the editorial or the op-eds or whatever you call it, where you follow a columnist or a person that writes, and you know that person has a certain orientation, and then they're going to give you their opinion on something, and then on the other side of the page you have the opposite opinion from the other person. And then, but that's op-ed, that's opinion, is editorial, okay, saying I'm going to give you my idea of what Trump is doing right or whatever situation it is.
It's all opinionated.
But now there's no division between the news and the editorial. Now the news headlines are already opinionated.
Yes, I agree
and that's the problem
with you, and that's why I don't look at the news anymore, and I don't watch the news.
Because they rely on subscribers, and obviously all the print circulation is dead. Nobody reads a printed newspaper anymore, so everything is online. And the way they get the advertisers now, and that's because it's my business, the way they get the advertisers is by clicks on the ads and click-through rates and so forth. So they don't have a headline that makes you click, and they can prove to the advertisers, hey, we have 10 million impressions per month or whatever number, and so many click-throughs. If they give you a headline when they say blah, 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 and the headline tells you the story, then you don't click.
Right. And you would know that because you're in digital media. You have your own digital media agency, and then your background is in journalism, right?
Exactly.
And only to just shift and segue into something.
There's a reason why they call it clickbait.
Yeah.
It's clickbait for a reason. I mean, you were a fish, you would bait.
But wasn't your college so I'm totally switching lanes now.
Yeah, that's fine.
But let's steer the race car from COVID Chronicles to so tell me about Blair Witch Project and how you were part of Blair Witch Project before it became the production.
I wasn't really a part of the actual movie, but I went to school back in Maryland, Montgomery College, with the director. And I'm basically part of the crew that ended up making the movie. So this is back in 80s, between 87 and 89. So we were all, what back then was called film and TV production, basically, in Montgomery College. It's a community college in Maryland. It's very upscale in Montgomery County. So we were all in college, and we were doing television production and film and video and all that stuff. And we all were like directors wannabes. I mean, we were up when Spielberg and George Lucas and all that stuff were like the top directors, and I was lucky. I had just moved from Spain, actually, and I went to college there. And I was super lucky that I was surrounded by a group of young kids. I was older because I already went to college in Spain. So when I went to college in the US, I was already like 22, I think. And these kids were like 18, 19, they were more out of high school here. So, but in the film and video production class, we were pretty good buddies, and we were like all different ethnic background stuff. It was very nice. So we had these projects at school where we were kind of doing commercials and doing things, just like mock-up things, So one of my friends, which was Ed Sanchez, the guy that ended up directing the movie, had this script that he wrote, and which was basically the Blair Witch Project. So when we were there, one of the projects that we did was create a preview, like a trailer for the movie that we had not even made or thought of or anything.
Sure.
So we were already kind of going through the woods in Montgomery County, Maryland, all that stuff, just kind of thinking and I mean running and doing like this trailer for something that didn't even exist yet. And we were videotaping with camcorders that were like this big with VHS and all that shit, and just pum from the burst of the wood in Montgomery County, just doing all that stuff. And it was pretty cool. But then after that, I graduated and started working for a real production company in Washington, D.C. That's when I was basically in news and all that stuff. And that's where I did a lot of government contracts too, because reminds me of what you're doing with Taylor, with your consulting company. I was doing a lot of video and film production it was a Hispanic market agency back then, because I was obviously bilingual. I could work with them, and then we had a lot of government contracts and stuff. So anyways, I got a real job, and then when these guys ended up like a year later gathering just enough money to do this very, very low budget movie, I already was living my own life, and then I basically said, no, I can't do the movie, because otherwise I'll lose the job that I've been trying so hard to get.
I was working, and it's just because of when it came out and when it was produced and when it was marketed, at least here in America, that I was working as a courtesy clerk actually, I was at Bash's just down the road.
Oh, really? Okay.
But then I was actually at Fry's just over here as well. Yeah. And I was a courtesy clerk, pushing carts, stocking shelves, and doing the stuff like that. And I remember like people. This is when VHS was still popular, like you were describing. Yeah. So they would have somebody. They, meaning a production company, would hire a marketing company or someone to set up the displays of all the movies. Yeah. And so Blair Witch had its own little display. And, I ended up buying a VHS.
Yeah, it was
went home and watched it, and I was like,
it was a big hit.
It was
and I remember
scary
when
as a kid.
I think when it came out, I had already moved out to Arizona, and that's another reason why I couldn't even be part of the opening or anything, because I moved here in '93. I don't know exactly when the movie came out, but I moved here in October '93. And so I kept in touch with them, but this is before social media and everything else. So it was not that easy to be in touch with people, even with cell phones or things like that.
So makes complete sense.
But they had the school had this newsletter that they tracked me down, and they basically started sending it to me, and then we started being in touch with each other, and then I found Ed on Facebook, and we started talking all the stuff, and then the rest of the group. And so anyways, when I saw the movie, I was like, oh fuck, I could have been part of this team. But at the same time, I'm a no regrets type person.
Right.
So you
had your own stuff going on. It was just cool it's cool that you were a part of something that became.
Yeah, no, it's cool that you go to school with, and remember, I was just new in the US to begin with. So I'm surrounded. When I went to Spain to broadcasting and journalism and film and video, basically major. The college, the university that I was in, have very limited amount of equipment. So for us to actually be able to, we were learning all this theory and this and that and boring shit, but for us to touch a camera was very difficult because there were so few. So you had to kind of like one a semester, you had a chance to do some video or something. Here was the opposite. Here we were all days in the studio doing television shows and this, pretending to be big shots, but we were just doing ourselves.
Now, at that time, when you're in your early 20s, had you already had a passion for race cars, or did that come later?
Well, I had a passion for cars and racing.
Look, this is your podcast. Watching. I'm asking the questions.
No, you're my co-host. No, I always had a passion for cars and racing, because this goes back to, I don't know, since I was very little, and my dad actually let me drive when I was like, I don't even remember, but I remember the place, and I know that I was like 10, 11, 12 when I was on his lap steering a real car, because there was he was shifting, and this is manual transmission stuff, and I couldn't reach the pedal, so I would just steer, and then he'll basically do the shifting and everything. I think as soon as I could, I was already driving, but my passion for racing didn't really start until my economic situation improved, because I couldn't afford it. So I did a lot of some go-kart racing before, or not racing, but just practicing. And then I really didn't start racing more seriously until I moved to Arizona. On 93, 94, I bought. That's where I asked you when you said it was your DPS.
My dad.
Patrol, because I bought a Mustang that was a DPS patrol car.
Did it have a Corvette engine?
No.
Okay, so my dad had my dad was an Arizona highway patrolman for 20 years. When he first started out, I don't know how, because he was a rookie cop. Yeah. And I don't know how or why, but they gave him a 5.0 Mustang with a Corvette engine. And that bad boy was awesome. He took me and my brother on ride-alongs, and he'd be like, hey, watch this. Right
before I moved to Arizona, I actually bought a 5.0 Mustang patrol car, but it wasn't from Arizona. It was actually from Florida. So they were selling those at an auction, and back then the rule was that I forgot what it was. If the car had like 80,000 miles or 3 years, they would just get rid of them, sell them. So this one had a very low mileage because apparently the patrol person that was assigned to this car has some kind of I'm not sure if it was an accident or some kind of medical condition, so he was out, but the car was already 3 years old, so they sold it, and I bought it at a police auction, and then I didn't do anything to it. I remember driving in Washington with a black Mustang with a spotlight and everything, and going on the freeway there, everybody would pull over.
The little spotlight on the side, like where the side mirror
with
is.
the handle and everything,
Yeah.
and it was it was a civilian car, but it was painted all black, spotlight, and in Washington, which is a lot of Secret Service, CIA, FBI, whatever. Every time I was on the freeway, it was like parting water. Everybody was just getting out of my way. It was great
Because they thought you were real.
They thought I was a cop or FBI or something.
So I was
not only that, everybody was slowing down. I was like,
look. I was a little bit of a rebellious wild card when I was in like high school, okay? And so I had a couple of friends come over in high school. I was probably a freshman in high school. And I'm not trying to get my dad in trouble. He's since retired. So
yeah.
My dad went to a like a banquet dinner for like a work related event or something. Yeah. So my older brother Aaron was supposed to quote unquote babysit me.
Yeah.
And so my brother was cool. He was like, hey, if you have a few friends come over, whatever, just don't wreck the house and just be on your P's and Q's kind of a thing. Uh-huh. And my brother even said like, and look, we're teenagers. My brother's like, I'm going to have a couple of beers. You guys can have a couple of beers too, but just keep it on the DL. I'm like, okay, no problem. Well, I ended up, my dad's 5.0 Mustang was sitting in the driveway.
Yeah.
And he always hid the keys, but I knew where he relatively stashed the keys. And so I ended up finding it. And I ended up turning on the sirens and that spotlight that you're describing. Yeah. And my neighbor ratted me out. Now, it wasn't like my friend, the neighbor, but it was my friend.
Oh, yeah.
The parents that were supposed to be kind of watching my brother and and we didn't know that they were like hawks and watching us all night.
Yeah.
So when I did that, I thought I did it quietly. I put the keys right back where I found them. And it was only like 5 minutes. It wasn't like we were in there for 5 hours.
Yeah.
When my dad came home,
I
was trying to pretend like I was asleep. I was like, my dad ripped the covers off me, picked me up with his bare hands, picked me up at eye level and started shaking me. Do you understand I can lose my job? Do you understand how big of a deal? I was like, oh man. So if you're listening or watching, don't play with a cop car if it's not yours.
Yeah, no, this was my first car, and I actually had a 2.3, the smaller engine model. And when I got this one, I was like, holy shit, this thing has so much torque. And I was like, so anyways, I didn't touch the car for a while.
What'd you do with it?
Well, I didn't do anything when I was in Virginia. I was just driving it. And then when I moved to Arizona, is when I started kind of because Bondurant, the school is right here, right next to us. And back then, the school was using Mustangs for their race cars, for their school cars. And Bondurant is a high-performance driving school that, obviously named after Bob Bondurant, who started famous racers. So anyways, they had a school of high-performance driving, and they were using four cars, the Mustangs for the race cars, and then they had like 4 Taros or something for destructors or something, and then they had the Formula cars too. So anyways, I became friends with a guy that was a mechanic at the school, and then after hours we would just tinker with cars, and because he knew everything about Mustangs, all the tricks and stuff, because they were using him at the track. So I basically started doing like any other mechanic, just moving things and trying to make it fast and trying to change the suspension and change this and do this on the engine, and then just one thing led to the next. Then at the end of the day, the car became a full-blown race car. I had to take it off the street. It was illegal to drive in the streets anymore, and I have pictures in the garage. I'll show it to you later. But I raced that car for a while until basically just I sold it. I mean, I wanted to move out to another class or something, and I sold it. But yeah, that's how I started racing. It was probably like 94, 95.
So did you ever professionally race, or is it more like a hobby, like an individual?
Well,
hobby?
it's a semi-pro. I mean, I was much more involved in racing.
Like, did you ever have sponsors or anything?
Yeah,
like
I did. Yeah, cool. I know. When I started racing, it was never a full. Well, I basically became the owner of a racing group that it was called ASC, or American Stock Car Challenge, and that was my semi-professional. We had sponsors. We had a full series that were racing in the Southwest. always road courses. We're going to all the major tracks in the Southwest,
Sure.
basically, Laguna Seca, Infineon, or Sears Point, California Speedway, Miller Motorsports in Vegas, and obviously in Arizona, back at PIR when it was open for road courses. I mean, we were all over the place. And but that was until like 2006, 7, maybe 8. And then I became so busy at work that it was so hard for me to just do both.
You know a guy named, and this is just one of my Los Angeles buddies. His name's Troy Hansen. He's with a company called World Media LA, but he was a racer. Pretty sure of it. And he might still do it.
Maybe. I run into so many
And then
people.
my buddy Jason Weiss, he's the CEO of Phoenix Pumps. He has a couple of he has a few cars actually, and he loves doing that as well. Going to the tracks and
right.
racing.
So now I race more as select events, and we do a lot of private events too, and then I do a lot of VIP. Private rides, like for example, you and I were talking about going to a racetrack and giving you a ride.
Yeah,
so
you've been talking to me about this for a year. When are you going to let me buckle up and go?
We were actually ready to do it this year. Unfortunately, all the tracks were closed because of the COVID, and I couldn't. I mean, the only things that I've done this year is. Before anything happened in January or February, I went to California and I had an event over there with a bunch of Porsche people at Buttonwillow, which is a racetrack in near Bakersfield, and then we went down to Tucson on a private rental thing to test the car, and then now in the summer, my car is now being the engine is being rebuilt. But no, as soon as everything comes back to normal, I definitely want to do that. I mean,
That'd be awesome.
I want to, but that's one thing that I like now. I mean, I've raced so much and all that stuff, and I do still do go-kart and karting pretty much every weekend. I haven't done so much in the summer, but I do like to stay in shape with karting, which is super, super intense.
What's the fastest you've gone, and have you ever crashed?
In a go-kart or in a car?
Either.
Well, in a go-kart, the fastest I've gone is 105 miles per hour.
Jeez. And there's no body that
No.
holds you in.
The
So
go-kart
if
is
you
different. I mean, I have a lot of videos on YouTube. The go-kart, it's a shifter, obviously. It's a race go-kart with 6-speed, manual transmission, no clutch.
So if you flip, I mean, your body's
You
projecting.
don't even have a belt or anything, so on purpose. I mean, you have a full gear and everything, helmets and collars and everything. But if you flip in a go-kart or you have an accident, you are supposedly it's like a motorcycle, you want to be separated from your vehicle, so you fly on one end and you let the go-kart do the thing on its other end. So it's like a motorcycle racing. When you see MotoGP or any of those guys, they slide and then the bike starts flipping and the guys are kind of sliding away. So even though
I remember you showed me a video of when I want to say about a year or two ago, but you showed me a video where you hit the side.
You try to when you're going head on into something, you don't want to hit head on, so you try to kind of you try to scrub off
almost like
speed.
fishtail
into
the side of the wall, or
you flip you do something, so you flip the cart, go sideways, and then you don't hit head on, and then you scrub off even more speed.
And in a car, what's the fastest you've gone?
About 200, depending on the track.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, it's sometimes. I mean, that's a typical question I get all the time. Like, how fast do you go? How fast is the car? And sometimes you can go 200 miles an hour in some racetracks, and it feels like nothing. I mean, it feels like now in others you can go 120, and you feel like your balls are here. So it depends, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like I remember. California Speedway is the long oval track. It's a 2-mile oval, and we never do the oval when we do road courses. We do like the infield, and then we come back to the oval. But when you come back to the oval, you come what they call NASCAR turn 4 into the front straight, which is actually a little bit of a curve, and then turn 1 and 2, and then you brake hard into the infield. Well, you can go there 180 miles an hour through the thing, and
That's crazy.
And I'm there driving. And that's what I used to do, anything that is not driving related. I mean, I remember one time it was in the rain. Obviously, it wasn't going that fast in the rain, but it was raining and my windshield was getting like a little fogged up and everything. I couldn't see very clear. So I'm literally driving and I'm trying to wipe off with one hand with my gloves.
As you're going.
As I'm going 100 and whatever.
That's crazy.
You know, and then or talking on the radio or I'm checking this or that, because you're just basically wide open throttle with the foot on the floor and just keeping the steering if you have to steer a little bit. But you know, it's not so busy. You know, and then when you get to the corner, you're fighting the car. You know, but in some other cases you can go slower. But it's like COTA, the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, is a very, very rewarding track for the driver. I mean, it's like a roller coaster. You go up and down in essence, and you're working the wheel all the time, and you don't go that fast, but you feel the car on the edge all the time. So it just depends. I mean, speed is one thing. I mean, you can go drag racing at 150 miles an hour, and it's like bam, 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 bam. That's it. Man, when you're cornering, braking, downshifting, all that shit, it's just different. You know?
I remember I was at Dallas Motor Speedway. It had to have been at least 7 years ago at this point, but it was a Wounded Warrior, a veteran event that a buddy of mine, Dana Bowman, threw out for a bunch of his foundation. I think it's right out of Dallas Motor Speedway, and they had like a plane that was allowing guys to parachute into the middle of the speedway while the track had race cars going around with veterans in them as well. And so the driver of the Navy car basically said, come on.
Oh, yeah, the stock car.
I put on the suit, put on the helmet. We go in there, and it kind of gave me this spiel like, hey, keep your hands on your,
Right.
if you got to hold on to the side, you got this. And he said, he actually said, if you want me to slow down or if you're panicking, slap my chest and I'll know to slow down or whatever. Yeah. So I said, okay, cool. He says, I'm going to smack your chest when we hit 200. He goes, we're only supposed to be going about 180.
Yeah.
He goes, but I'm going to try to take you to 200.
Yeah.
So as soon as we got to 200, he smacked my chest and he goes, how are you feeling, buddy? And I was like, oh shit. And just like you described, it felt like my nuts were coming out of my throat. The adrenaline was just nuts.
If I were a passenger, I would be freaking out much more than if I'm driving. Like, you're not in control. That's the thing. To me, I know it sounds cliche, but sometimes you feel more danger driving on the freeways.
We were inches in front of or inches behind the car in front of us, and they were driving so quick.
Right.
I think we did 3 or 4 laps total, and on the 3rd or 4th lap is when we went 200 because all the cars just kind of broke off and then started doing their own thing. And when he did that, he smacked my chest. He goes, how you feeling, buddy? And I'm like, oh, fuck.
I know. And on a race, you can go, as I said, you can go like with a cloud of other cars around you, whether you're leading or in the middle of the pack at 160, 180. And we're all
one
moving like
swift little move.
Yeah, it's like,
and it screws the whole pattern off.
Yeah, I mean, all it takes, as long as everybody's moving in the right direction, you feel like.
And what do they call that when like you've got like 4 or multiple?
Like drafting.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
it's called drafting when there's multiple cars like going around a corner,
following each other.
Oh man, that's like.
Well, but that's when you try, especially for stock cars like NASCAR stuff. They do a lot of drafting like that because they obviously go faster. The first car is punching the hole in the air. It's basically breaking the air, and then the other ones are taking advantage of the cleaner. Like not clean air, but basically the vacuum that the other car is generating.
Sure. So when we were going around the track just as a single car, the adrenaline was awesome and intense, but not quite as intense as it is when there's like a car inches in front of you, and if one swift move, you're done.
Right. So you have to rely on what the other guys are doing too.
And then obviously the steering placement.
The car, obviously the mechanical part of the car. But in road courses, which is mostly what we do, ovals is a little more consistent and continuous, and the car setup is made so the car naturally turns left. And in road courses, obviously the cars are symmetrical. They call a perimeter chassis, or basically a car that is made to turn right or left. I mean, everything is symmetrical, and then you're going. The main thing is the most impressive thing that people feel when they drive as a passenger, like you will see with my car, is the braking. You will see a corner. You will see that we're going like maybe, 140, 150. And then you see a corner coming, and you normally in a normal car will brake like way before just to make the corner. But with a race car with good brakes, you can brake so deep and late that your eyeballs just come out. I mean, it's like when you are strapped with your chest, and the driver doesn't feel it so much because you are holding onto a steering wheel. But when you're a passenger, you feel your whole. You can have like 3 or 4 negative G forces moving forward because you are braking so hard. So that's the thing that impresses the most usually when people, that and the G-forces, because the car grips a lot.
Like when you watch like a fancy or a luxury car commercial, it's like they're in the countryside. They're probably somewhere internationally, and it's like
sometimes they go up to the Grand Canyon, Sedona, and all these
and
areas.
They've got the entire highway blocked off for the commercial so that they can do that. Like what would that career title be? Like, what is that person's job?
I've done that.
Are they a test driver?
Yeah, you become. I've done that actually. I've
And
done
then
those
the blonde.
commercials.
What's the blonde's name? She has all the luxury cars like Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and all these awesome Bentleys and Rolls Royce. But it's all like the most futuristic cars, and she has access to all of these. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. But the word blonde is in her title.
Is that a YouTuber lady?
I think so, and I think she's Australian or.
Yeah. She does. I mean, there's a bunch of people that do that stuff.
What a cool job.
Those are the ones that I usually look at YouTube all night. They basically have.
I forget the girl's name, but you know.
Vlogs and they do that stuff. I mean, she kind of shows up, but they don't do a lot of heavy driving. But when you see the commercials that you're talking about, and I've done a few of those on the filming side, not on the driving side.
I see.
But,
okay.
But you basically the procedure is actually pretty simple. In this case, we actually did a few commercials for Mercedes when they came out with their SUV and some other cars. We went in this case to like Sedona area there, and we blocked off. It was actually between Sedona and Jerome, and so we blocked off a certain of the freeway or the highway there. No, it's not a highway. It was a curvy,
the road that leads to Jerome.
State route. Yeah,
it has like 60 turns or 80 turns or something like that.
Very scenery. So you call the DPS, the basically the highway patrol here, and you say you're gonna film, you get a permit, you pay for the permit and all that stuff, and they block the road for you to do that stuff. And then we get a professional driver, which in our case we got an instructor from Bondurant to be the driver, and then he's not doing anything special. He's just basically driving up and down, and then we have another car that is following with cameras hanging from everywhere, so we get low angles and high angles. Awesome. And then inside.
So it's
the
same thing for movie production. I mean, they would have to get a permit.
Obviously, yeah, it's the same thing. You get a permit and do that stuff. With movie production, you can get very sophisticated. You can have, obviously, you do multiple takes. Sometimes you have the camera mounted on the hood, and then you're taking the view of the driver as he's driving.
For B-roll and all that other stuff.
Now you get drones and everything that are flying next to the car, on the top. And obviously, you have a chase scene or something with, what the cars crashing, all the stuff. Then it becomes incredibly complicated, and they block off areas and all that stuff. I mean, of cities. But that's mostly the sophistication. I mean, when I was watching Ford versus Ferrari, that movie that came.
I never got to see that.
Oh, it's actually on video, I think now, or somewhere. I've seen it like on maybe it's Apple. I mean, you can rent it or something on TV. It was good. I mean, it's funny because that's when Ford and Ferrari had this rivalry in Le Mans, the race, which by the way is this weekend, and. That's the 24 hours, the most famous endurance race in the world, basically, where all the brands or the marquees go there to see who has the best car. And obviously, Ford and Ferrari back in the 60s were the Americans versus the Italians, and the Ferrari had never lost and all that stuff, and Ford had never won at Le Mans. And so the story is about Ford basically deciding we're going to go to Le Mans and win that race, and it's the whole story. But the point is that when they were filming the movie, they did a lot of the training and the filming at Willow Springs racetrack in California, which I've been there tons of times. It's a nice track. I mean, it used to be very nice back then. Now it's a little outdated, but it's a very fast track. And so they did a lot of stuff there. And it's a good movie. It basically relates the story of how Ken Brock and Ford went to fight with Ferrari, and then they ended up winning Le Mans. And Ferrari. Back then, Enzo Ferrari was totally pissed off. The chairman of Ferrari saying, "Oh fuck, we got beat in our own territory," But racing is fun. Speaking of cars, what is your dream car?
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, so I would have to say Lamborghinis.
Lamborghinis.
It's just like whenever I see it, I'm just like, oh man, those are so cool. The suicide doors and just how fast they can go and. Just the luxury of it. Ferraris are cool too, and Porsches are cool. I mean, there's a lot of cool cars out there, but I think if I was to get one, I would probably have to cut, if I had the money, of course. Because it's like, what, $250?
Well, there's all kinds of price ranges. I mean, you can find Lamborghinis for $200 to $250, or you can find it for $1 million or more.
It's just crazy. Well, I'd probably go for the $250 version if I could afford it, right? But I think just getting like a black on black Lamborghini would be awesome. Or
I need to take you to my friend's Burham Motorsports. My friend that actually works on my car too. He only works on exotics, and in fact, I have a picture on Instagram of him working on a Lamborghini. I think his customer paid like $15,000 or something just for an exhaust.
Oh yeah, it's just absolutely
it
crazy.
The thing was custom made, like Formula One technology. The sound was wicked. I mean, really, you had to plug your ears because it was like, and it comes in a briefcase. Like it looks like you're moving arms or something, or arms dealer, and you open it, it's like pipes, titanium, all that stuff. And it was beautiful. And so I went there. I was there for something else, but I saw the car, took some pictures, and then he had to start it up and then just pull it out of the shop. And that sound was just incredible. I mean, the chassis was like, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Things. That's one thing. I mean, I love technology, and I really like the electric cars, what they're doing now. Obviously, the Teslas and every other company that is coming with great electric cars that are very good looking too. I like the Porsche Taycan, the new one that they just came. But the sound is something that they need to do something, because to me, the sound of a V12, V10, 14,000 RPM engine, I mean, that's something that, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm more old school, but you cannot replace that. You know?
I don't know enough about cars like you do, but I was always interested to learn about your background. On how you got into it. And
to me,
cool.
I mean, I always like cars, like every little kid, playing. I still have little toys and stuff everywhere. But the thing that I learned the most is I like to see how things work. And when I liked cars, I didn't know anything mechanically about cars. Like I couldn't tell. I mean, you show me a part, I couldn't tell what it was. I mean, I couldn't modify my car or anything. But somehow I had this ability to learn mechanical stuff fairly easily. Like it's not like a drag for me or anything. So I started reading a lot of books. A lot of the books that you see down there are all car books and stuff back on the other side. And so I started learning about mechanics and aerodynamics and this and that, and then working on my cars. And right now, every time I get another car, it's like when I got the Porsche that I'm racing now, I knew nothing about German engineering or Porsches or anything like that. The Mustang, I basically knew nothing, and then I knew everything. I totally rebuilt that car myself. I could put it together with my eyes closed. With the Porsche, it was the same thing. It was rear engine, German, this. I didn't know much about it, and then I started working on it. And now I'm basically super familiar with the car too. I mean, right now I'm replacing the roof of the car, so I can do pretty much anything. When I started karting, it's the same thing. I knew nothing about go-karts and how they work. It's a complete different thing. I mean, there's no suspension and stuff. And now I can basically just tune my own kart.
My wife said, when you go with Manuel, I want you to be safe. I want you to wear a helmet. I want you to buckle up. And she was very like, tell me before you go. I want to make sure I pray for you. I'm like, just let me have some fun.
I know.
Just let me go have fun.
We'll definitely. I like to give rides to people because that's something that I like to share. I mean,
it's an experience.
It's part of what I do, And but I'm very concerned about safety. So I definitely, if we go to a track, obviously we need to both wear helmets. The safety is the same for the driver or the passenger. But also when you drive with a passenger, you don't go 100%. Obviously.
You know, it'd be cool. I have a little GoPro camera. Now this sounds bizarre, because it really is a bizarre marketing.
Yeah.
Is a couple years ago I bought a bottle of cologne.
Yeah.
And it came with a free GoPro. I know that's a weird partnership and it's a weird marketing campaign, but I have a GoPro. I've never used it, and I think it'd be fun to, I don't know how, but attach it to like the helmet or something. So I can watch my reactions going around.
Oh yeah. When you see these videos, when they do these videos on YouTube or anything, I mean, my race car has 4 cameras.
Right. And you showed me one the other day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have 4. I have one facing me, one facing forward from the windshield view, from the rear mirror, but facing forward. And then I have one other one that is over the shoulder.
Have you ever put one underneath?
I put one for the pedals too.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I have one that faces backwards. And my rear view mirror, I don't even use it. I have like a camera with a TV that shows me what's going on behind with a little monitor. And then I have one that I use sometimes for the pedals, so I can see my footwork. Because I like to study the film, so to speak. And it's funny how sometimes you feel like you're doing something, but then when you come back and you review the film or the video, you say, "Oh shoot!"
Well, because it's a high speed, so it's nice to probably be able to reflect a bit on what you just experienced.
So you study, like I say, okay, this corner, I could have been like 3 feet closer to the right. I'm always drifting out, or it's understeering. Maybe I need to take this over line or something, and then your memory shows you that or tells you that you kind of did it the way you wanted, but then when you look at the camera, it's like, or the video, it's like, oh shoot, I still had like 3 feet on that right.
I was going to ask too, is for me personally, just being a high-powered entrepreneur and just always on the go. One thing that I always like found decompressing for me personally is driving, and just street driving, highway driving. There's something about driving that's calming. Is it fair to say that when you're on the track that it's like,
to me, honestly,
the rest of the world is
funny you mention that
you?
Because I was under so much when I started my new company back in 2005. I was like 110% into the company. I mean, I was eating, breathing, sleeping, just trying to get the business going, and I was so ambitious and everything. But then I also had the race team, and I was with this other group. And the only time, I mean, literally, I could be watching a movie and thinking business. I could be doing whatever and thinking business. It's like 24/7, nonstop, all that shit. The only time that I will not think about business is when I'm actually driving the car,
So it is an outlet for you.
Yeah, and it still is that way. It's the only time. It's not even. It's so much that it's not even when I'm working on the car or getting ready or whatever. It's driving the car. With the moment I put my helmet on, the strap on, and all that stuff, it's like every cubic inch of my brain and everything is into driving.
Laser focus.
And I have a 100% focus. I wear my car. I feel my car. Everything. So it's the only time that I say, "Wow, this is like," it's like the best. Stress reliever for me,
kind of like sex for me, but
yeah.
I'm just joking. Sorry, honey. But,
hey,
but no.
But seriously,
I think everyone has multiple outlets, and so for me, I've talked to you about my evening routine, and I kind of cool my jets in certain ways, but I've always been interested because, like I said, I have a few friends, some are close, that do this for a hobby, like yourself, my buddy Jason. I know that he talks about it all the time. That he's just like, when I'm out there, nothing else matters. It's just me and my car.
And that's the same thing. I mean, that's why I have the cars in the garage, and I'm so happy that I like to work on them and do my stuff. Like during this COVID situation, you and I usually go out together and get together and do things after hours or hang out a little bit. All of a sudden that stopped. I mean, we couldn't go out, and I didn't feel like I was gonna break the rules or whatever. So I spent a lot of time in the afternoon just at home, and I would just go to the garage, work on my car, or to the yard and do something. I'm always had to be busy fabricating or building something. And I'm not the kind of guy that says, "Oh, well, it's over. I'm gonna sit down and watch TV or whatever."
My wife ended up taking kind of like a COVID trip. It was a family reunion for her, but like it was also an escape from homeschooling the kids and just getting out of the COVID crunch. And so she came back from that. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so recharged. Why don't you go somewhere?"
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Durango, Ouray, and Silverton, Colorado. Had a blast. But towards the end of my trip, the last morning of my trip, I'm like, I'm going to go horseback riding. Man, it was so like, I don't know. I'm 30. I just turned 39. And I think when I was probably 9 years old, 30 years ago, I rode a horse. So it's been 30 years since I've done it.
Yeah. Wow.
But when I was out there, they say that there's that term horse blinders, when you're like laser focused. But I had my horse blinders on, man. I didn't care about anything. It was so peaceful. My head was like laser focused on just riding the horse, and I felt the horse. And every time he bent down, I was supposed to pull him back up. And they said the one that I had was the snacker. So he'd always tell, but I was just like, I want to get more into that because it was so calming and relaxing. I'm like,
you have to do something. Everybody needs to find something that kind of takes you out of your routine, your daily grinding. Because as we started the podcast, we live in a place where we're constantly bombarded with bad news. It's like everybody's being negative. Everybody's, oh my God, this. And then if it's not that, you hear from friends that lost their job or do this. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't hear somebody that I know that was laid off or they were furloughed or this or that. And it's like, for God's sake, let's just be positive, and so you need to find something for your own mental health, in the broad term of the meaning of that.
And so for me, church too. Church is an outlet for me, but because of COVID, churches are all online right now and virtual, and I'm like, that what I don't like about that is that you're inclined to start clicking around and get sidetracked, and then what that does is it leads you down that rabbit hole, that downward path, or that downward spiral, so to speak, where now you're looking at the news and you're looking at all the negativity on social media. And it's like, so church for me, these last 6-7 months wasn't a healthy outlet. as much as I would have wanted it to be, you know. And God bless the churches for doing what they were doing with, you know, the online and the creative arts teams and all that. I mean, they were doing a great job going virtual for church. But for me,
on the schools, I mean, you have 4 kids.
Right.
That are school age.
I
honestly don't know how families are doing it these days. Well, I mean, you obviously are an entrepreneur. You have your own schedule, and you have a little more flexibility, being able to drop off, pick up, stay home, whatever, you know. And your wife the same. But I mean, I know families that are like, I don't know. I mean, they are like totally messed up because they're not used to having 3-4 kids at home,
or being forced to be compartmentalized with everyone all at the same time for 7 months straight.
And each of them with a little computer to be online and all that stuff. It's just a whole different situation.
And here we go back to the COVID Chronicles. It's hard not to talk about it, right?
I know, it's just hard
because I hope we never experience this again. Anyways, another pet peeve, if you will, COVID pet peeve, is I've got 4 kids, right? It goes, Vance is 4, Vivian's 7, Lacey's 13, and Madeline's 14. So you've got high school, middle school, elementary school, and daycare. That's literally our breakdown, and will be for some time. So these kids had no playgrounds to go play on, no friends to go play with, no outdoor activities, nothing to do, especially in Phoenix, because it was in the middle of the summer, hundreds of degrees outside, or over 100 degrees. And then they're on their tablets or their phones or their computers all day long.
Right.
And then when the schools started mandating this online schooling, now they're forced to be on a device that much more every day. And I'm like, oh my God, my kids were turning into little maniacs.
Yeah.
I love them to death. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I know. No, it's just
as a parent, I was like, get off your device. Even when you were
trying to limit their online time or internet time or play time on computers, now it's like, oh, no, but this is different because now you're learning, you know, so... Anyways, we've been talking for about over an hour now. I don't want to take a lot of your time today, but I definitely want to do this again. I think I had a lot of other topics that we want to talk about, but we'll get to them next time.
Well, I will say this. It's a little, I'll plant a seed. There's a lot of really exciting business stuff that's in the works right now. So hopefully next time we can chat about it.
No, definitely. And I also tell you that you yourself should have your own podcast too. And we're going to discuss that.
Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
It might be coming soon.
Yes. I hope so, because I will be excited to be your guest. But aside from that, I think you have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of good people that you know that would love to share the stories with you. And I think your podcast would be very successful. So I definitely recommend it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I might need you to mentor
whatever
me.
you need. I will definitely be helping you. But I think it'll be a great thing. It's not a podcast. Not so much about getting like millions of downloads. I mean, if you touch one person each time, that's basically mission accomplished. And I when I started this one, it was more just to do exactly what we just did. I mean, 2 friends talking, and then if somebody gets motivated or, you know, excited or listens to the first 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes, whatever, you know, that's good enough for me. I'm not trying to, we don't have sponsors. I'm not trying to get rich. I don't need to get rich. I just want to share ideas with somebody.
No, and it's cool.
So I think definitely you'll be successful, and you will be touching a lot of lives if you have yours too, because you have a lot of insights that, you know, nobody can have, you know. So
well, I appreciate that, and thanks again for having me.
Anytime, Anthony. We'll do it again for sure. And for everybody else, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.